Good morning, NFI. Have you ever wondered why your computer gets slower and slower over time? Well, today I'm going to teach you about disk fragmentation.
The nerd fighters!
There are, of course, many different things which cause a computer to slow down over time. Heat, dust, too many toolbars. Today, though, I'm going to teach you about disk fragmentation, something which I've always found oddly fascinating. There was a line on last week's episode of The Magicians which described a spell as like someone had defragged my brain. That started me wondering, does anyone under the age of 30 even know what that means anymore? Even in tech circles, I've noticed that being used less and less as a term. So what is fragmentation and why does it matter? Imagine this is your hard drive, and we have to design a way to use this space as efficiently as possible, using as little processing time as possible with each request. What engineers came up with does have its inefficiencies, but also requires very little processing logic when storing each file. Engineers decided to first divide the drive into smaller blocks. When you store a file on the drive, it takes up as many blocks as it needs. But this is where the first of the inefficiencies pops up. Only one file can be in a single block. So the second file has to start here. Same with the third and fourth and so on. Now at this point we decide we don't want file 2 anymore, so we delete it. So what do you think happens if we add a new file at this point? We don't want any complicated decision making that might delay the storage of the file, so we simply start at the first available block. If there's not enough space for the entire file, we simply split the file and then carry on at the next available block, and we leave a little mark noting the position of the next part of the file. At this point we add a couple more files, then we decide we don't actually want one of them and delete it. What we actually want to do is work on one of our video projects, and that dramatically increases the file size of the project file. It needs more space, and the same as adding a new file, we just continue at the next new block, splitting the file if necessary. As you can see, the data on the drive is quickly getting mixed up and out of order. So why is this a problem? To know that, you need to know a little bit about how hard drives work. I want to say it's like a record player, but I'm suddenly worried that a lot of you are too young to have seen one of those either. But basically, there are multiple spinning disks and an arm which moves across the surface to read and write the data. And the problem is that when the data is split up across multiple sections of the disk, the arm has to move further to read all the data, therefore making it slightly slower. And that builds up over time, making your hard drive speed worse. To combat that, you have to defrag your drive. Defragging is the process of stitching all your files back together and then putting them back on the drive in a more sensible order. Back in the DOS days, defragging was an essential part of computer maintenance. It would take hours to do a 250 meg disk, but it was fun to watch. In Windows 98, with better graphics, it was even more fun to watch. But then in XP they replaced the display with a progress bar. But as computers have become more powerful and hard drives have got more space and more speed, fragmentation has become less of a problem. And since Vista, Windows has been secretly defragging your files in the background while it was idle. But unless you're the kind of person who leaves your computer overnight, sometimes it's never going to get enough idle time to complete that process. However, if you decide you do want to give your computer a full old school defrag complete with display, there is a piece of software I can recommend to you. Piriform's Defraggler, link in the doobly-doo. I've not done a full manual defrag on my new computer since I built it 6 months ago. Let's see how well it's doing now. Yep, that's pretty fragmented, but on the other hand that is also a solid state drive, so less susceptible to the speed drop. But still, a bit of preventative maintenance is always good. Finally, I should add, this only really affects you if you're on Windows. If you're using Linux or on a Mac, they have a slightly different system which isn't as susceptible to fragmentation. A little bit, but not as much to worry about. I hope you learned something today, and Panino will see you tomorrow.